Welcome to Naked Spirituality, a video blog series of sacred attention therapy. My name is Rob Meeker. For more information about sacred attention therapy and our video blog series, please visit our website at www.sacredattentiontherapy.com. These video blogs are intended to be spontaneous and unscripted dialogues between myself and other participants in the Sacred Attention Therapy study group. And we use these video blogs to dive deeper into discussions emanating from the discussion group. Our guest today is Searle Hawkins. Leo is the author of Break Out of Your Mind and enjoys sublime peace even when the world's going crazy all around you. And Leo's website address is www.breakoutofyourmind.com. And it's now my pleasure to welcome Leo to the video blog.
Hey, Robert.
Namaste, Leo.
Namaste.
Nice to have you back with us.
Good to be with you.
We came out of a study group, and the invited discussion that we began was around the question, what attracts us to fear? What attracts us to fear?
To fear?
To fear. F-E-A-R. Fear. Okay. What attracts us to fear? What I want to dive deeper in to discussion and dialogue with you is, as the study group was ongoing and engaging with people about that question, what attracts us to fear, based on the lectures by Richard Harvey, it brought to my awareness where I have arrived at with fear and where I am still journeying with fear. And it used to be not that long ago that fear was definitely something I tried to avoid. And of course, we know all the pitfalls in that. I knew for the betterment of my growth that the only way through fear to come out the other end was actually to face it. But I would still resist facing it. Whereas today, at least in speaking with you here now, fear I recognize as something that's absolutely paramount to face. It's a heightened awareness of the need to go beyond my fears, and the only way is to face them front on. And I wanted to ask you, Leo, where are you in your life with fear? And can you respond at all to what I opened up with in terms of the awareness of the only way to get through it is to face it?
Well, certainly my perception and experience, yeah. To walk straight into fear is the only way. And fear, it's kind of like this big, bad ogre thingy, isn't it? Oh, fear, it's frightening, and we kind of run away, don't we? But if we just stop, turn around, face the fear, walk straight into it, it just dissipates. It's so simple. But sometimes we have to fully feel it and embody it. It doesn't dissipate immediately. And sometimes, if it's really deep and it's been around for a long time, what I've noticed is it might take several walkings into, shall we say, before it dissipates completely. But every time that I've turned and faced the fear, really felt it, even full bodily, it's dissipated. The energy level drops, and it never comes back as strong as it was before, and eventually it just dissipates completely. It's a bit like washing a bottle out with some washing up liquid. Wash it up, and there's still suds in there, and you have to rinse it several times to get all the suds out. So it's kind of like giving ourselves multiple rinses before the fear is completely gone. That's sort of a way of explaining it.
Have you ever been in a setting, Leo, where the discussion has invited around fear, applying that approach, the facing of fear, to what might be thought of as extreme situations we may find ourselves in. So whereby we're faced with an imminent danger. So I'll exaggerate and say a saber-toothed tiger is standing in front of me. Or a person with a gun or a knife is standing in front of me. And before I invite you to respond, other students have gifted me with the awareness that these extreme examples, as harsh as they may sound, really give us a wonderful opportunity to rub our nose in it, to rub our nose in the teachings, to invite us to face it head on. So I'll come back to ask, have you been in settings where that invitation has been offered to us to apply what we opened up about in the video blog, about facing our fear, to what might be thought of as real-life extreme situations that are perceived as fearful, and how to get through those in that moment?
Okay. So are you saying, have I had those experiences?
Have you had the experience of being in a setting where someone asks about how do I apply it? And then, I could also ask you, have you been in those situations and how have you dealt with them? But let's deal with the first. That is, you're in a setting, a discussion group, and someone invites the question, well, how do we apply that fear principle, having to face it, to a real-life situation where we're in imminent danger?
Okay, so the first thing that comes to me is we've got to be very clear to make distinctions between the different forms of fear. There's an instinctive form of fear that seems to be in my perception, appears to be hardwired into the body. It's a basic survival, fight or flight mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the emotional fear, the imaginary fear, which is really what I was talking about earlier, about walking into the fear. That imaginary, mental emotional fear is, it's imaginary, it's an illusion. And when we walk into it, it just dissolves like a mirage, in the desert. It's not there, actually, really. We just think it's there, and we get frightened of nothing. So that's one kind of fear. But then there is the physical fear. I'm facing a saber-toothed tiger came into the room right now, I think I would experience a significant degree of fear. But this is, it's the same as walking down the street. The classic example is, would you walk in front of a bus or a truck or a car? No, because we instinctively know that's going to hurt, and fear keeps us alive. If we didn't feel that primal fear, we wouldn't last 5 minutes on this planet, I don't think. And it's also like, what comes to mind is many, many years ago, I was walking around New York in Manhattan with my wife at the time. We were on our honeymoon, actually. And we weren't streetwise there at all. We just got off the plane. And we walked around Broadway, and that was really nice and everything. And then we just turned a corner. And we didn't realize then that the neighborhoods in New York change from one block to another. They're so geographically tight. We didn't know this. And we walked in there, and suddenly we are surrounded by all these black dudes, everywhere, all over the pavement, and every pore of our bodies was kind of electric. All the hairs are standing on end, and we were holding each other's hands. And we didn't dare look at each other, because we both instinctively realized if we looked at each other or gave any sign of being afraid, we could be dead.
Mm.
Because this was a very hostile environment. We were the only white people there. I mean, there's nothing racial about this, but it's just, it was full on. And you could feel all these eyes looking at us.
Mm.
What are you white dudes doing here?
Mm.
This isn't your place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we just held each other's hands, squeezed, and just kept looking straight ahead, didn't make eye contact with anybody, and we just walked through everyone and walked out of the danger zone, turned another corner when it was safe, because it was so geographically tight, turned, and then looked at each other and went, oh my God! Because, you know, we both knew. I mean, that fear kept us alive. It was intense. It was electric.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's quite vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
In some ways, the fear, it was interesting you just said the fear keeps you alive.
I think so, probably. It certainly kept us out of a lot of trouble.
An interesting an interesting way to experience fear. Your story reminded me, because of the visual of turning the corner and coming upon this scene, or finding yourself in this scene. It was earlier this summer. I was out on a hike. Actually, I was on my bicycle in the woods, in nature, on trails I had not been on before, and it felt as I turned a corner that I was turning a corner, and there, about 15 feet in front of me, was a very large deer. And of course I slammed on the brakes and I stopped because it was blocking the path. This thing was quite large. And my initial reaction was one of fear. Now I realize in your example you're in a situation that finds you with other humans around you. Now in my situation I found myself with a deer.
Excuse me.
And so different elements. But I looked at this deer that was very large, very much larger than me, and realized that if it decided to attack me or turn on me, I was toast.
Mm.
But then something, as I looked into its eyes, something melted in me. And so did the fear. And I just saw this beautiful creature. Now, very different settings and different elements. But I thought to myself after the experience, because shared a little dialogue with the deer. Don't know if the deer understood what I was saying, but I was telling it how beautiful it was and thanked it for its presence. And I thought afterwards, what would it be like if I could apply that experience to every other fear? Being able to look into the eyes of it and feel the fear just melt away. And I know that I'll be given that opportunity to explore it. And time will tell if I'm able to apply it. But this fear is such an amazing opportunity for growth. I've heard it say that one can approach fear in two ways. Fear everything and retreat, the fear being an acronym, fear everything and retreat, or face everything and rise.
There are various acronyms associated with it, aren't there?
Yeah. False evidence appearing real is another one.
There's another one, but it uses a word that I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use.
Hey, I can edit it out. It's fear certainly seems to be the root or a root of our experiences here in this time and space. It seems to be very much a driver for how we see and experience the world.
My observation is that most people seem to be more motivated by fear than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It seems motivated away from pain, basically.
Can I ask you to talk about that further? Motivated away from pain. Are you suggesting that fear motivates us away from pain? And if so, how does that work?
Well, I don't know. Let's see where it goes. I just noticed in my work with my clients, in various different roles, what gets most people to come to see me is a problem,
right,
or a pain. We could generically call it pain. There's something they're struggling with, and there's something they're suffering with, you know? And that gets to such a point that they feel, I can't live with this anymore. And that motivates them to get in touch with me. And then we can work on that. And most of the times we can resolve that initial pain, that suffering of some kind, that problem that they're experiencing, that they want to move away from. But because their motivation is away from, which I think, basically fear is moving away from something. Their motivation tends to stop. And this is my observation, that's what is true for most people. And once they seem to get sufficiently well in order to be able to function in life, that was it. That's basically, and they would stop their work with me. Not everyone. There are some wonderful people that I've worked with for long, substantial periods of time who saw that there was much, much more on offer than just sort of getting back to some level of normality, shall we say, here, normality. But what I've observed happens is that, and it seems to be the vast majority of people, is that they get sufficiently well to be able to function again, and then because they're sufficiently well to be able to function, the motivation to do any work, to practice, dissipates and just drops away. Mm-hmm. But when the motivation is towards love, towards growth, towards devotion and truth and awakening, mm-hmm. that's continual. So you could say, I don't know, if there was a graph, I haven't done this before, so I'm just figuring it out as we speak. So, the away from motivation gets people to do some work, but then it drops off once they feel better, because the motivation is dissolved by the work when it's only away from. Now, the fortunate few, because virtually everybody got to see me through a problem, but the fortunate few kind of got to this point and then realized there was a lot more on offer, mm-hmm. and to move in to another dimension, to go up into discovering greater peace, happiness, truth, love, and engaging in the practice because they love it, mm-hmm. not because they're trying to get rid of something.
Mm-hmm. I've heard it said that we're always only in one of two states, mm-hmm. fear or love. Mm. And I found it to be a truth for myself. And I can't identify what percentage of time. It's a bit of too cerebral for me, but what percentage of time am I in love versus fear? But let's just say I'm in fear often enough that I know there's still a lot of work to do to make that state of love a more permanent state of being and a permanent state of awareness. Your story or sharing about working with clients, and it made me smile. They come to you and they'll work through a problem, and then once that problem is solved, they will go along their merry way.
Yeah.
And it's an observation I make as well, is that more often than not, a person will do the work required only so as to deal with what's on the surface of life, what's facing them, and that's good. That's a very good thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's no judgment involved in what I said.
It's a very good thing.
Yeah.
What I find equally curious, given my own experience, is the realization that you're being offered the opportunity in diving below the surface of life to the realization that what was on the surface, what problem may have been presenting itself to me, is merely a teaching device. It's merely on the surface, and that for as long as I stay on the surface of life, it's only ever going to repeat itself to me.
Yeah.
And I need to dive below the surface, because when I do, and I start to deal with the root of whatever the fear is, for example, which is what brought us together today, I'll notice what's on the surface of life melts away. It reveals a newer truth, or the truth. And it's always very interesting to observe, and in myself as well, you know, how sometimes I'm only willing to go so far, even with my own healing. And quite often now it's a very conscious decision, as opposed to where it may have been unconscious before. I know that, okay, I'm not ready yet for that. The time will come when I know I will be, but now is not the time. So I share it in as compassionate a way as possible, because I know myself sometimes there's still work to do in a certain area. Leo, I think I'm going to leave it there today. I know you need to run off to an appointment, so I want to honor that and let you honor it. And the time flew by again. I'm so enjoying these opportunities to share with you. So again, I'll thank you very much, Leo.
It has gone incredibly quickly. I couldn't believe it when I looked at the time just now.
Indeed. So I'll thank you, Leo.
Well, thank you.
And look forward to sharing with you again, hopefully next week.
Indeed. Thank you, Robert.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.